If you're a coach and you're struggling to land leads, struggling to land sales, you're posting and hoping and the leads just aren't coming in, this is for you. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a strategy that I use with every single one of my clients and myself to bring in leads every single week and sales. Now, what you're going to end up with at the end of this 20-minute period are 66 bits of content that actually convert. I'm not talking from theory, okay? Over the last 4 years, I've invested over 100K into my education, and I put that inside the Expert OS, which this strategy derives from. So look, this is going to be hands-on. This isn't your typical YouTube channel, okay? I'm here to teach you, and I'm here to help you. So what I want you to do is in the description below, there is, let's go with a fire emoji. I want you to DM me the fire emoji on my Instagram so you can get the workbook and the AI. Now, a word of warning. Do not use the AI until you've completed the workbook, because otherwise you're not going to know what you're doing. So you're going to have to complete the workbook anyway. So save yourself the hassle, okay? Cool. Let's get into this. Let's go. I'm excited for this. There we go. So the content capture system, content that actually converts. We aren't after views, we aren't after likes. The way I want you to look at this is when somebody makes a buying decision, it isn't from one post. It's from a multitude of different posts hitting them in their different pain points, really speaking to them, understanding their problem, sometimes better than they do. And they want to hear it from a person who's in the trenches. They don't want to hear it from somebody who's just barking orders. Okay, they want to hear it from somebody who's actually doing the thing, whether you're just starting off and you've done it for yourself or you are actually working with clients. That is something I want you to understand and bear in mind throughout this process. Cool. The first thing we're going to cover is the 3 different types of content. There's content that gets reach, content that builds trust, and content that gets sales. Each specific piece of content has a specific role. Now, for reach content, the objective for reach content is to get you followers, to grow your audience. Trust content gets people to go further down the pipeline, further into your world, allowing you to nurture them. So this is typically going to be comments, maybe how you've landed here, which leads to a lead magnet, email list, or YouTube, right? And then your sales content is typically going to be one of 3 things, or lands in one of 3 places. Your story on Instagram, if you aren't running YouTube or email just yet, your YouTube, just like myself, and email, okay? So whilst I am on the topic, if you want to know how to work with me, one-to-one or inside Expert OS, you've got 2 options. Check out the description below. If you need help growing your coaching business, it might be the time for you, okay? So check out the description. Cool. Now we've understood that, we're going to look at a phase. I want you to understand the difference between strategy and tactics. Tactics are short-term, strategy is longer-term. The same way that you might set up a training block or a phase for one of your clients. There's a specific outcome at the end of that phase. And the specific outcome that we want for you is sales, right? Now, depending where you're at in your journey, we're going to use a different setup for each phase, which we're going to cover in a second. Okay, so just bear that in mind. If you're just starting off, absolutely fine. If you're somebody who's already got a bit of an audience, cool. And if you're somebody who hasn't launched or done something for a long time, or made a sale in a long time, you've just been building trust and providing value, there's also a strategy for that. But the general overview of all strategies, there's one rule. It's not always 6 weeks, but we're going to run for 6 weeks on this one, is the last week, we're going to use yellow for sales content, just for reference. We're going to color code this shit. The last week is always going to be sales, okay? Everything in between might be trust. So trust is blue. I think blue is a very trustworthy color. That's what they say psychologically. And then green will go for growth, okay? So you can see this phase that I've set up here is geared more towards building trust, because more of it is trust-based content. Now, within each week, it doesn't mean every single post is going to be value. There's going to be elements of reach in there as well, little smidges, and little smidges of selling as well, because we want to make sales throughout the entire 6-week period. We don't want to just leave it to that final week. But what we are selling is going to be different. For the first 5 weeks, we're going to be selling what we call your bang bang offer, your main offer, okay? And this final week here, we're going to sell the dip, a dip into your world. Now, the advantage of this is if you're having conversations and that trust hasn't been built up yet, maybe you've tried to get somebody on a call and they haven't moved. Maybe you've got somebody onto a call and they didn't buy. It's probably down to the fact that they didn't trust you or they didn't believe that this was going to work for them. It might have been the length of your program. It might have been a money thing. They didn't want to commit that much money to somebody that they don't trust yet. So what the dip allows us to do is lower the bar, get them into your world, and then upsell them and move them into your main offer, okay? So what the dip does, it empties the pipeline. And then once you run phases, you can again get a more predictable, steady form of income and revenue into your business, okay? That's just a general overview. Now, this is where you guys are going to get to work. The next 3 pages, you've got growth, if this wants to work, authority, or a sell launch phase, okay? Now, I want you to pick the phase where you are. If you're somebody who hasn't really got an audience, you probably want to go with a growth phase. If you're somebody who's got an audience, you've been posting content for a while, you probably want to go with authority. You want to turn your followers into believers. And if you are somebody who hasn't launched anything in a while, you haven't pushed in the DMs, you just haven't been doing it, but you've been posting content, you might want to go with more of a sales biased phase. I wouldn't recommend the sales biased phase. So whatever scenario applies to you, I want you to fill that in, but I'm just going to run through an example. So if you're somebody who has got an audience, has been posting, but hasn't been able to make the sales, you probably want to go with a trust building or authority phase. That might look like this. So you could have 3 weeks of authority building content, 2 weeks of growth. And remember that final week is always going to be where you sell your smaller offer. And if you haven't got a smaller offer, it might be a good idea for me and you to have a conversation, okay? There's a link below to apply for my one-to-one service. It's not going to be a pressure sales tactic or nothing like that. Genuine help. If it does make sense for you to move forward, then cool, I'm happy to do that. And if not, hopefully you get the value that you need, okay? So go and set up your phase or the phase that is most suited to you right now. I want you to pause the video, select which one it's going to be. Is it a growth phase? Is it a authority phase? Or is it a sales phase? Go and do that, and we'll get back in a second. Cool. All right. Next. Now, with every single week in that phase, so we're going to use this one for example, it does not mean that every single day we're going to be, so let's use the first week for example, it's a growth week. It does not mean every single day we're going to be posting growth content. We'll use this box here on the right hand side. So this might be a setup for a growth week, okay? So the first 2 days, assuming that you are posting 5 times a week on short form, that's where we get the 66 from. I'll explain that to you in a second. You might have three days of growth, 1 day of trust, and you might have just a smidge of sales, okay? That is for a growth week. If it's for a trust week, it might be 1 day of growth, 3 days of trust, and 1 day of selling. If it's a sales week, you might go Monday, Wednesday, Friday on sales heavy content. I would not recommend this at all, by the way, unless, like I said, you haven't launched anything, you haven't been active in the DMs, you've not been pushing anyone, okay? But I really would not recommend this. I really would not recommend this at all. But the options there. You might have one trust day. And you might have one growth day, okay? So depending what the objective of that week is, might be better off using black here. You're going to vary your content mix for that week, leaning towards the main objective of whatever week that it is. Hopefully I've not lost you. So I want you to quickly go back to your page, your phase, and set up what a growth week would look like, what a trust week would look like, and what a sales week would look like. Pause the video, get that done, and I'll see you in a sec. Right then. So this is pretty easy now. So we've got our specific setup for the week. Say if you're going towards a more balanced between growth and trust, it might look like that. But all you need is 5 ideas for that week, 5 inputs for that week, because essentially each one of those ideas turns into an email if you're running an email, and one of those trust bits of content turns into a YouTube. YouTube is always trust-based, educational, relatable content, which allows you to build that trust. And in that content, you can sell, just like I've told you about my offers, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. And if you're not at the email stage yet, or if you're not at the YouTube stage, it's absolutely fine. Just focus on the top, on the short form. Right, this is where it gets juicy. Now, inputs. Do not create content. Capture content. This is where the content capture system comes from. The content is already around you. It's in 8 places. It's in your client results, okay? It's in your results, in the DMs, your own point of view, in your industry, what's going on there, questions and objections you might get on sales calls and DMs, your own personal story, or something that's gone on in your week. That's all we need. So all I want you to do is I want 5 bits from you, 5 inputs, 1 or 2 lines about one of these areas, okay? So you can pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can pick 2 clients, 1 of these, a POV, and 2 of this. Just 5 inputs, 5 things that you've experienced over the last 7 days in your business or in your own life, okay? And just write them down accordingly in this box. Pause it, and I'll see you in a sec. Cool. Now we've got the raw inputs. We are then going to enrich using questions. We need to add context. We need to add depth. Like I said, we don't want to be people just talking shit. There needs to be something that lands with the audience, some sort of value in the story that we are telling for them. So whatever is applicable to you, if you've gone with a client result, you're going to answer these 3 questions. If you've got your own results or receipts, cool. Just go to the relevant section here and answer those 3 questions for each one of those inputs. You'll have a bit of more of a expansive bit of writing, which will give you the raw material that you need to use the AI. So pause the video once again and do that. Cool. Finally, format selection. This is where people focus way too much time on. And I get it. Everyone's talking about formats. Yap has been massive recently, but it's not that important. It's about whatever is easiest for you. So the role of the content, or the lens you want to look at your content, it does one of 3 things. It either teaches, it tells a story, or it provides proof. Once you've decided, are you going to teach, are you going to tell a story, or are you going to provide proof, you can then select your format. So we might have Yap, carousels, a picture with a caption. You may have video plus text over the top. YouTube, if you're doing YouTube. Email. You might have talking head, a rant, green screen, reaction, whichever one is the easiest for you, should I say. You want to make it frictionless. The reason why I can put out YouTube is because I've got a setup. I set it up. I can literally go from doing work, having an idea, and then bang. I've made it easy for myself, but I know some of you might not be at that stage yet, and that's absolutely fine. Your phone, I haven't got it in the office, is good enough. You can get a DJI, okay? Mine's on this stand over here. 300-400 quid, I think they're going for nowadays. Whatever is easy for you, there's no right or wrong way. If you don't feel confident talking on camera just yet, use carousels, but make sure those carousels bang using what I'm giving you today. And then depending the role of that specific bit of content, whether it is trust building, whether it's reach, or whether it's sales, you're going to ask for a follow for reach, comment, or you're going to ask for an opt-in, depending what bit of content, So comment for trust, green for reach, and yellow for opt-in. So now you've got your input with context, with depth, your format, and you've got your CTA for each bit of content. And then going back to your actual play, the play that you're going to make with your phase, you've also got that mapped out. This is where you get the 66 bits of content from. You've got 5 here. I'd be better off using a different pen. Yeah. You've got 5 here, 5 that turn into email, and then you've got 1 here, which is 11 times 6, 66. But don't worry if you're not doing all these, you've still got 30 bits of content that actually move somebody towards a specific goal that you've got for your phase. Cool. If you do want help setting this up, like I said, there's details in the description. Don't be a stranger. Reach out to me on Instagram. I don't bite. I'm not going to try to push you onto a sales call if you don't want to, okay? If you don't need the help, that's fine. If you do want to move forward, that's fine too. But hopefully the next 6 weeks are going to be one of the biggest 6 weeks within your business. Go and get it. I'll catch you soon.